Ugh. Why does this tree smell like that, and why is it planted everywhere? That's right, it's time for another episode of Invasive Species. There's the fruit. In this series, I'm going to be taking invasive trees, shrubs, plants, bushes, whatever we can get our hands on, and using material from those plants, most likely wood, but hey, we might try to get creative later on, and turning them into a vase, while also teaching you a little bit more about what makes these things so invasive in the first place. Also, just to make things extra fun for you all for this episode, we got a piece of crotch wood, because, well, we'll talk about that. This is a really quite heavy piece of wood, by the way, very green, which means two things. One, it's gonna be a delight to turn. And two, the finished vase will probably crack quite a bit, which I also like. Grab our roughing gouge.
That's right, up today we've got the calorie pear, Pyrus caloriana. A species of pear tree native to China and Vietnam, the calorie pear is perhaps most well known by its incredibly common cultivar, the Bradford pear, which has become a ubiquitous landscaping tree throughout North America. In the early 1900s, a man named Frank Meyer, a fascinating character worthy of his own future video, helped collect calorie pear seeds to bring to the US to help combat a blight affecting regular pear trees, as calorie pears held promise for being blight resistant. But then in the 1950s, US scientists developed a thornless cultivar of the tree they called Bradford that promised to be the tree of the post-war American suburban ideal. And as expected, the tree was an immediate hit. In 1964, the New York Times gave the tree a glowing review, stating that few trees possess every desired attribute, but the Bradford ornamental pear comes unusually close to the ideal. They cited the exact same things that have made the tree remain popular among HOAs and suburban landscapers to this very day, including its colorful fall foliage, its lack of fruit litter, and especially its showy white clustered blossoms that are among the first to come out in the spring. One thing they didn't mention about those blossoms, though, was what they smell like.
Oh, terrible. We're turned down to round. We've got our foot here, so let's flip this over and put it in our chuck. So episode 1 of this series was the Ailanthus tree, or the tree of heaven. That one I only did as a short form video here on YouTube Shorts and also on TikTok and Instagram. On TikTok, I have the ability to do short form vertical content up to many minutes long. Instagram, kind of the same thing there. Whereas here on YouTube, if I want to stick to vertical short form content, I only have 60 seconds to work with. And I really struggled cutting that down to size to fit here on YouTube. So when it came time to do episode 2 here for the Bradford pear, I figured I may as well experiment, try posting this as a full-length YouTube video. I can just tell that this is just not a series where I'm ever going to be satisfied cutting it down to 60 seconds. So for those of you that are here, thank you. For those of you that are not, we miss you. All right, here goes nothing.
Bradford pear blossoms have a, let's call, distinct odor that some liken to rotting fish, while others say that it smells, well, more like something else. They smell like that because this tree is pollinated not by bees looking for nectar, but by flies, so the flowers emit a decay-like stench to lure them in. Another thing people soon began to discover about the tree is that it's quite short-lived, often reaching only 25 years old. It's also particularly prone to growing weak crotches that cause big limbs to come crashing down in even the lightest of storms. So over time we learned this tree has a lot of problems, but is it actually invasive?
Now I will say that here in these conditions, the Bradford pear cannot outcompete native plants, so it's not invasive where I live. But A, that is definitely not the case in other parts of America, and B, we've planted so many of these in urbanized areas that it may as well be invasive. For example, I just drove around the strip mall parking lot and counted each and every tree here. About 140 of them were Bradford pears, and about 85 were a mix of a handful of other types of trees. That is way too many that are the same stinky, smelly, invasive tree. we're doing this to ourselves.
Because developers, landscapers, and many homeowners want nice, pretty blossoms, but not the fruit that comes with them, it feels like the tree has developed a chokehold on urbanized areas. To make matters worse, though, in certain parts of the country, the Bradford pear is able to outcompete native species and establish dominant stands in wild environments. The fruit of this cultivar was supposed to be sterile, but they've been able to crossbreed with other calorie pears and produce fertile fruit that are then eaten by birds and spread into the countryside, causing the tree to become invasive in many regions of the South, Midwest, and Northeast. As a result, many states are finally starting to crack down on the tree. Ohio, for example, made it illegal to sell it just last year. Conservation groups in many states offer free native saplings in exchange for removing a Bradford pear on your property. But in some states like mine, where the tree isn't technically invasive, it's still listed by some cities as one of the only allowable trees to plant on park strips or public areas. All this while there are many great native alternatives out there if what you're looking for are trees that have pretty blossoms that don't stink, like service berries, hawthorns, dogwoods, crab apples, just to name a few. Now, before I finish this vase and add it to the collection, I want to once again thank a viewer named Ruben Daly who suggested the amazing title to this series during a live stream. It's in honor of work that his mother Orit Daly does at Little Light Pottery, in which she presses invasive leaves into ceramic vases. So go check out her work to see the inspiration for the series' title, as well as a really cool way to utilize invasive plants. As for this Bradford pear wood vase, I'm happy with how it turned out. It's already started to get some nice cracks in there, and this pale plain color will just continue to darken over time. Let's place it next to the ailanthus vase, and this is a safe space. Tell me all your thoughts on the Bradford pear, and let me know which invasive species you'd like to learn about next.